The Girl Who Ate Tulips, the Audrey Hepburn story. Picture this. A thin girl, maybe 15 years old, hiding in a cellar in the Netherlands while bombs fall close enough to rattle the dust off the ceiling. She hasn't eaten a real meal in days. To survive, she's been grinding tulip bulbs into a kind of flour and baking them into bread. Now picture that same girl 16 years later, floating down a Roman street in a black cocktail dress, eating gelato, laughing like the world was made of sunshine. Same person, Audrey Hepburn. And honestly, that contrast is the whole story. Let's get into it. So here's something wild. Audrey Hepburn wasn't born Audrey Hepburn. She was born Audrey Kathleen Ruston in Brussels in 1929 to a Dutch baroness and an English businessman. Her mother's side had actual noble blood. If history had gone slightly differently, we might be talking about Baroness Audrey instead of Audrey Hepburn movie star. Instead, history had other plans, most of them terrible. Her father, Joseph, was, let's say, complicated. He left the family when Audrey was 6. That alone would be rough for any kid. But it gets darker. Joseph turned out to be a Nazi sympathizer, involved with fascist organizations in the 1930s. Her mother, for a stretch, actually admired Hitler too, before reality set in. So little Audrey grew up part nobility, part abandoned by her dad, with a family shadowed by one of the darkest ideologies in human history. Not exactly a fairy tale opening. When World War II broke out, Audrey's mother thought the Netherlands would be neutral and safe, like it was in the First War. So she moved the family to Arnhem. It was the single worst gamble of her life. The Nazis invaded. Arnhem became occupied territory and later, the site of one of the most brutal battles of the entire war, Operation Market Garden, the one you might know from the film A Bridge Too Far. Young Audrey watched Jewish neighbors disappear. She watched trains. She has spoken, later in life, about seeing men being marched to execution. Here's the detail that still gives me chills. Historians believe Audrey may have acted as a courier for the Dutch resistance, a skinny teenage ballet student, slipping messages into her socks, using the fact that nobody suspects a graceful girl practicing plies of carrying intelligence for the underground. By the final winter of the war, a period the Dutch still call the Hunger Winter, food had essentially vanished. Audrey ate bread made from ground tulip bulbs. She drank water colored green from grass. She developed anemia, respiratory problems, edema, swelling from malnutrition that would quietly damage her body for the rest of her life. And here's the part that sounds like a ghost story. Some biographers describe Audrey during this period as physically hiding, silent, motionless for hours, while Nazi soldiers searched homes nearby. A teenager holding her breath in the dark, waiting to see if she'd be found. That girl grew up to be one of the most photographed smiles in cinema history. Now here's the twist nobody expects. Audrey Hepburn's original dream wasn't acting. It was ballet. She trained hard, she trained seriously. But after the war, a ballet instructor in London gave her brutally honest news. Her years of wartime starvation had permanently weakened her body. She was too tall, too thin, too physically depleted to become a prima ballerina. Imagine that gut punch. The thing that kept her sane through occupation, dance, quietly closes its door on her because of the very same occupation. So mostly to pay rent, she started doing modeling gigs and small chorus line jobs in London musicals. Nobody was planning a film career. She was just a broke young woman with excellent posture and tragic backstory, trying to survive in post-war London. Funny enough, it was almost accidental that anyone noticed her. She was filming in the south of France when the elderly French novelist Colette spotted her in a hotel lobby and reportedly declared on the spot, "There's my Gigi," casting her, essentially by ambush, in the Broadway play Gigi. Audrey had never acted on a professional stage before in her life. That's how casually the universe sometimes hands you your destiny while you're just standing in a lobby, minding your own business. That stage success snowballed into Hollywood. In 1953, she starred in Roman Holiday opposite Gregory Peck, playing a runaway princess. It was her first major film role. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her first film. Let that sink in for a second. Most actors spend a decade clawing for a nomination. Audrey Hepburn showed up, did one movie, and walked home with the Oscar like she'd ordered it off a menu. From there, the 1950s and 60s became her golden run. Sabrina, funny face, Breakfast at Tiffany's, where, fun fact, she reportedly wasn't the studio's first choice. Marilyn Monroe was actually considered for Holly Golightly, and of course My Fair Lady, where, in a twist that still annoys musical theater fans to this day, her singing voice was dubbed over by another performer, Marni Nixon, because the studio didn't think Audrey's voice was strong enough. Audrey wasn't even told until fairly late in the process. Imagine giving the performance of your career and then discovering someone else gets to be your singing voice in the final cut. Here's where the story stops being about fame and starts being about something else entirely. In the 1980s, Audrey mostly stepped back from acting and instead threw herself into work with UNICEF, eventually becoming a Goodwill ambassador. And she didn't just lend her face to the cause for photo ops. She physically traveled Ethiopia, Sudan, Bangladesh, Somalia, during famines, during civil wars, into refugee camps, to draw global attention to children who were starving. Which, if you think back to the beginning of this episode, is almost eerie in its symmetry. The girl who once survived on tulip bulb bread grew up to spend her final years standing in famine zones, looking straight at cameras, saying, "Don't look away from this." She once said that childhood hunger left a permanent mark on her, that she understood in her body what those children were going through, because she had been that child once. In 1992, not long after a grueling UNICEF trip to Somalia, Audrey began experiencing stomach pain. Doctors diagnosed appendiceal cancer, a rare cancer that had already spread. Surgery couldn't stop it. She chose to spend her final months not in a hospital, but at her home in Switzerland, surrounded by her family, her sons, and her longtime partner Robert Wolders. She died in January 1993 at 63 years old. Her son Sean later said one of the last things she reflected on was gratitude, that she felt she'd been given more than her share of both love and adventure, considering how her life began. So, what do we actually make of Audrey Hepburn? She's remembered as the most elegant woman who ever lived. The little black dress, the sunglasses, the tiara, the whole aesthetic vocabulary of classic style that people are still copying on Pinterest boards right now, as you listen to this. But underneath the elegance was a kid who hid from soldiers in the dark, who ate flower bulbs to survive, who lost her ballet dreams to starvation, and then, somehow, through sheer chance and grit, turned herself into one of the most beloved faces in film history, and then turned that fame right back around to help other starving children, decades later, on the other side of the planet. Funny thing about grace, real grace, the kind Audrey Hepburn actually had. It's not about how you hold a teacup. It's about what you survived to be able to hold it at all.